Hi, this is Chris with AudioDiscovery. I fear that the PC76, an 1176 emulation in ProChannel and Cakewalk by Bandlab, is an underappreciated tool, and I'd like to talk about it, as well as compare it to some paid and some free emulations of some classic hardware. Now, for those of you who are experienced with the understanding of compression and what an 1176 does, here's a timestamp so you can head to the shootout. But for those who are interested in a brief summary of compression and the importance of an 1176 and why Cakewalk featured it in the ProChannel, well, here's my summary on the matter. Universal Audio lists the 1176 as a limiting amplifier, or peak limiter. In audio engineering terminology, limiting and compression is when you take a signal through a piece of hardware or software and adjust the settings so that the loud parts of the signal cannot get any louder, or they get less louder in the case of compression. Well, this reduces dynamics, and dynamics mean the difference between quiet parts and loud parts of the signal. More dynamics you have, the more difference between quieter and louder. And the less dynamics you have, that means you have less difference between the quiet and the loud parts. Okay, so let's think about the context of analog sound collection, like cutting onto vinyl cylinders or vinyl discs, also magnetic tape. Back then, electricity was somewhat new, and whenever there was an audio signal introduced, accompanying it was some noise in the background. Now, if you've ever heard classic television programs or old classic movies, you'll hear this low hiss hiding underneath the dialogue parts.
Broadcasting over WAAM, and this comes to you direct from the Edison Studios. WAAM, located at 1 Bond Street, Newark, operates on a frequency of 1120 kilocycles.
All of you are probably familiar with the sponsored radio programs which are rapidly becoming the highest type entertainment features on broadcasting stations. The finished product, in a great majority of cases, is a most satisfactory program from the listener's viewpoint. However, few listeners perhaps realize the amount of time and effort that is spent in preparing the program so that it will be entertaining and instructive. Let us therefore take a peek into the workshop where these broadcasting units are conceived and put together. We will be unexpected guests, so we'll just make ourselves as inconspicuous as possible in order not to force company manners on our hosts. Be very quiet now. Here we are.
Well, this was the nemesis of all engineers back in the day, and they needed to be able to feed the recording device with enough signal without introducing noise. Well, two things were needed for this: a great clean mic pre, and when the signal would overload the recording head, a great dynamics processor to reduce the level of those loudest parts. Having offered the LA2A, a legend for another discussion, Bill Putnam then offers up the 1176, which used field effect transistors in a new circuit design that would allow for the almost instantaneous dynamics processing, meaning the signal reduction was quicker and more pronounced than in earlier designs. Attack times were now adjustable from 20 to 800 microseconds, and release was adjustable from 50 milliseconds to 1.1 seconds. It's a fixed threshold design, which means the audio engineers to use the input level to control how much compression there is. So if you need more compression, you would add more input and you'd lower the output. If you need less compression, you'd do the reverse. Now, one more iconic yet unintended in the original design feature of the 1176 is the all buttons in setting, where the selectable ratio buttons, those meant to be toggled out if another one was selected, could all be pressed in, and you'd get compression on steroids. So you'd get this really overcompressed sound that had a bunch of harmonic distortion as a side effect. It also is supposed to delay the attack setting, which means you'd get much of the initial attack of the original signal. Now, those things are really important to know because it's going to affect how you make choices with the PC76. Okay, let's take a look at the plugin design. Its compact design is so it could be added to the ProChannel, but it's got all the features of the original, with the inclusion of a wet-dry knob for blending and having parallel compression options. The input and the output, that's self-explanatory, with input being the main compression level function. Attack and release operate reverse to the other emulations, but Cakewalk developers have helped this by showing the settings as they change. So we go from 0.0 microseconds of attack to more than 1.2 seconds, which in my opinion is excessive. The release starts at 50 milliseconds and goes up to 1.2 seconds as well. The ratios will change the dynamics behavior of the input setting. So the more input you feed into it, the more the peaks will be reduced by a greater factor. And remember that it's modeled after analog circuitry, so don't expect the math to be perfect. Just use your ears to decide what you like. Okay, so now on to the comparison. So we're going to put up PC76 against some paid 76 emulations, or at least the ones that I was able to acquire over the last few years. So we have CLA 76 from Waves, FET 76 from Arturia, Purple Audio 77 available from Plugin Alliance, VLA FET from Black Rooster Audio, and some of the ones that we have from Slate Digital, which are new to me. I just picked these up recently. We're also going to compare a few free emulations. One in Fetish by Analog Obsession, Leveling Tool by ADHD, and we're going to throw in the Sonatus compressor as well. It's not an analog modeled compressor, so you're not going to get the same kind of saturation in it, but it would be interesting to see what a digital compressor sounds like in the context of the ProChannel here. There's also the option of adding some tube saturation to emulate the nonlinearity of the transformer, but that's complicated and kind of unnecessary, so let's just worry about the comparison between the compressors for now.